Hi everyone. Today we have Shiv Bhasin here with us. He received an offer from EY India in Feb 2021. Let's know more about how he converted this company. Hey Shiv, how are you doing?
Hi Shubham, I'm good. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you here, Shiv. I'd like to thank you for being a part of this initiative. So I'll just explain how it's going to go today. To begin with, I'll ask questions about you and your profile, and then we'll deep dive into the placement process.
All right, sure.
All right. What was your GPA, your college GPA at the time
My,
you applied for EY?
yeah, my GPA at that time, which was till fourth semester, was about 7.6, 7.7, around that.
Or do you think that GPA actually matters when it comes to placement?
Well, I guess it does a little bit, but at the end of the day, if it's above a certain amount, which I would imagine is different for different companies, I think you've got to be above that basic
Minimum
criteria,
criteria.
but
Yeah,
minimum criteria, true. But at the end of the day, it's about your knowledge, your skills, how you're able to present yourself, how you speak, and etc. etc.
absolutely. So, how many PORs did you have in college?
Well, in college, I didn't have any PORs at all, but I did have a reason for that as well, is because I was trying my hand at chartered accountancy during the initial 1.5 years of college, which I failed in miserably, and I left that. And I had my reasons for that, and I was asked my reasons in every interview I gave, and they were good reasons, and the people taking my interviews, they did understand me and they did understand my situation, and I was honest throughout, so they were fine with it.
All right. So, did you do any courses or did you have any internships on your resume?
I didn't have any internships. Again, chartered accountancy was to blame for that. But yeah, the course that I tried was this, and I didn't have a lot of other courses. And all of this I put forward to those taking my interviews always, and I didn't hide anything from them.
All right. So, I believe this is a heads up for people who haven't joined societies in college or who didn't get a chance to actually intern in any company that they can still get an offer from a company.
Of course. I mean, it is important that you have extracurriculars in your belt, but otherwise, it's not that. Don't get nervous that oh, मेरा तो कुछ नहीं होगा, मेरे पास कोई ये सब option नहीं बचा. At the end of the day, it's on you. How you present yourself. It's on your knowledge, your skills.
True. So, did you always aim for EY or you had your eye on another company?
Well, there was no company that I didn't have my eye on. So I would sit for each and every company that was there. I would try my hand at everything that I could get. So I wasn't arrogant that I'm not going to join this company or not going to join that company. I tried everything.
How many interviews did you sit for before EY? Do you remember?
Before EY, I sat for two, Deloitte and KPMG.
So, that must have given you an experience about how interviews go. So, were the interviews very different in every company? Like, how was your experience?
Not really. They weren't very different. I mean, most interviews remain the same to a basic level. Of course, the technical questions vary from company to company, from department to department, and the way of taking the interview also can differ. So, for example, some companies take multiple HR interviews and a technical interview. Some companies might take just one interview in totality. So that differs, but the basic questions about yourself and your CV and the department or the company you want to join, they mostly remain the same.
Understood. How many rounds were there in the recruitment process for EY?
For EY, there was an initial aptitude test, and students were filtered from that, and there was a recorded interview test, sort of. So we had to go to a portal, and 6 questions were asked. We had to record the answers live and submit that. From there, we were filtered for personal face-to-face interviews, which had a technical round and two HR rounds.
All right, coming to the video interview round, can you give an example about what kind of question was asked?
Well, they had six questions. Some were very basic, like there will be in every interview that tell us about yourself, introduce yourself, etc., etc. Why do you want to join this company? And the rest were technical in relation to the department that I was interviewing for. So mine was tax. So I was asked questions related to tax, like what's the difference between direct and indirect tax and all that.
All right, so how much time did you get to answer all these questions?
In the recorded interview, we had, I think, about a minute or a minute and a half to prepare.
Oh, all right. And how much duration do you have to speak for?
The minimum amount was not set. You could give an answer for 30 seconds or even 10 seconds if you'd like. And the maximum amount was fixed, I think, at 2 to 3 minutes, but I'm not very sure on that.
All right. Fair enough. Can you tell us a little bit more about the aptitude test? Like what were the different sections and all?
Yeah, sure. So the aptitude test had, I think, four sections. The first one being verbal ability or English, more simply, quantitative ability or mathematics, logical reasoning, and the fourth section was general knowledge.
Oh, all right. So there was GK section as well.
Yes, this was one of
This
them
was
that had.
only for EY, right? This wasn't there for any other company as such.
No, this was only for you.
Oh, all right. Good enough. How did you know this beforehand that there was going to be a general knowledge section?
No, I did not.
So you didn't prep for GK at all.
No, I didn't. And I mean, preparing for GK is tough anyways because it
Yeah.
could be a whole lot of questions. So, I mean, you can't prepare within a week or
So
two or two
do you
weeks as
remember
well.
how many
So,
questions were there in total in the sections? Yeah.
I think about 12 questions to each section, 12 to 15. I don't remember now.
What was the duration of the test?
The duration of the aptitude test was about 40 minutes to an hour, something like that.
Oh, okay. My next question to you is that how did you prepare for the aptitude test? What resources did you go through?
So I didn't really prepare much for aptitude tests because I feel that you can't really prepare for aptitude tests in a short time. But they are very similar to the entrance exams questions that we gave after our class 12th exams. So you can probably brush up on the methods that are used to solve QA or LR questions, but otherwise they're very simple. It's not very difficult at all.
So I believe all of this was online. So is there any scope for cheating, something like that?
I mean, it depends on the person. If you can smartly outsmart the system, then of course there is, but I mean, I wouldn't
All right.
recommend it.
Yeah, sure. Were calculators allowed?
In EY, they won't.
Okay. Can you give a few example or the types of questions that were asked specifically in QA, DILR, and verbal?
Well, in verbal, they're very, very simple. It's basic English that you must know. For example, grammar correction or spelling errors, finding all that. LR is also very basic. Nothing is different from those entrance exams. So it's very, very similar. It's a much simpler level from them as well. So it's not something to worry much about.
Were you able to answer all the questions?
Well, since there was no negative marking the questions I couldn't answer, I would make the best guess that I could. But otherwise, of course, I couldn't answer all questions.
All right. So as you mentioned, there was no GD round for EY,
Yeah,
correct?
yeah.
Okay. So after the recorded interview round, how many rounds of interviews were there?
There was first a technical round, and then there were two HR rounds.
Okay. So can you tell us how did you prep for technical rounds and how was your experience?
Yeah, well, in the technical round, the most you can prepare or is that you should be conversant with the technical questions of the department that the interview is for. So, for example, mine was tax. So I knew the rates of taxes that are applied, GST and indirect taxes more specifically. the difference between direct and indirect tax, the pros and cons of GST, the recent controversies that happened around that. So all that, and otherwise you need to make sure that you're able to answer questions that they'll ask pertaining to your own profile. So your internships, for example, or your extracurriculars, they'll ask you about all that.
All right. Was there any question that they asked and you didn't know the answer to?
There was one question that what do you want to do going further, and what is your plan for higher studies? And I answered that very, very honestly. I said I haven't decided right now, but whatever I do will be in line with my interest, and it will be within this line in something in commerce, which is what I've studied all my academic life until now. And they understood that and even joked that, oh, so you're a go with the flow type person. And I said, yeah, sure.
All right. So was this a casual conversation or was it kind of a stress interview, like rapid fire round key, direct technical question keep on coming, and you have to?
No, it was more like a casual conversation. It's nothing very formal or nothing too difficult, or they're not grilling you or anything of that sort. It's
So
just
it's
a
fine
normal
even if you
conversation.
don't know a couple of answers, then that's fine.
Of course, it's completely understandable.
All right. So coming to the next interview, you mentioned that it was the HR interview, right?
Yeah.
So what were the kinds of questions that were asked?
Well, they ask you a bit about yourself. The first question is the same, I think, in almost all interviews. Okay, introduce yourself or tell us about yourself, which remains the same. Then they'll ask you to walk them through your CV. So they'll ask you questions about your internships or extracurriculars, or in my case, the lack of them. So I answered them honestly, and I gave them answers that I felt, what I felt, because I feel there's really no point in trying to mislead the interviewers, because they've been taking these interviews for a very long time. So if you're trying to mislead them or trying to lie to them, so they'll, I think, be able to see right through you. So I gave my honest answers. I said what I felt, and they understood.
I completely agree because if your lie is caught, and then you will get in that loop and you won't be able to get out of that, right? So you
Exactly.
have to be completely honest in your interview. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there was another HR interview after that.
Yes. Which
Was
wasn't
it
much
a
of an interview.
HR interview or was it an interview with a partner or a manager, something like that?
No, the technical interviews were with the directors. The HR interviews were with the HR professional of EY. So the third interview, which was not much of an interview. In fact, it was only the interview for those who later got selected. So I'm pretty sure they just wanted to have a conversation with those that they had decided to select.
All
And
right. It was more like a fit interview, right? Just to see if you fit within the organization or not.
exactly, they were asking us about our hobbies and making sure that we did have them, because he said it's very important to, take your mind off work after that heavy load week and all that. So it was more like a conversation.
All right. How many people were finally shortlisted?
Three people was selected.
All right. Three in tax and three in risk consulting.
Correct.
All right. Oh, this brings another question to my mind that how did you choose between tax and risk consulting? Because it was only, you were allowed only to apply for one, right?
Yeah, because I had more knowledge about taxation. And the second thing is also that at that time I was a bit desperate for this job. So I realized that for tax, only BCom honors and BCom program students could apply. But I'm not sure. But I think for
Yeah,
risk,
risk was
it was
open
open
for
for all
economics.
courses, right?
Yeah, economics honors and maths honors.
Yeah. So I thought that the lesser students, the
Yeah, that's a good strategy, I believe.
better.
All right. Any advice that you'd like to give? Anything that you'd like to tell them that because they're quite nervous and they have to face all of these rounds?
I'd like to tell them there's honestly nothing to be nervous about. And if I could get a job, I'm pretty sure all of them can as well. And I wish them all the best.